Oh, you got the remote, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think we're good.
Oh,
Okay. Welcome to the Kako Initiative, right? We got the man here today.
JT.
That's right, man. Jim Terrell. Let's get the business end out of it right away. Born in Milford, Ohio, 1965. Began building paddles age of 11. National champion in the U14 category in 1979. Competing on the national team for 20 years after. Won over 30 national championship titles. Won national titles almost every year between 1980 and 1999. Competed in 8 world championships between 87 and 99. Finishing as high as 7th in Germany in 95. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But medaled in 4 Pan Am Games. 2 gold medals in 87 and 95. Competed and won 17 gold medals, 28 total medals in the U.S. Olympic festivals between 79 and 91. Second highest medal count in that range, because I think those games ended in 91.
Yeah.
Okay. So second highest medal count. Qualified and competed in the 84 Los Angeles Olympics, 88 Atlanta Olympics, 92 Barcelona Olympics, and 96 Seoul Olympics. Inducted into the Claremont County, Ohio Hall of Fame in 94. Honored in 1998 by hometown Milford, Ohio, by naming the town park as a Jim Terrell Park. All while that was going on, you created and established QuickBlade in 1990.
More decorated than a Christmas tree.
Did I miss anything there?
Did you Google all that? Where'd you get all that?
Yeah, I found it all.
Oh, wow.
So I think the first thing about that was that when I was going through all that stuff, Joe and I like throwing around the word champion. Very, very, I feel like
Champion.
Yeah, all the time. And I think we need to be more conservative about how we use that word. Because I think Jim is a champion way more than anybody we've had at this table thus far, and probably will ever have.
Before I was alive, too.
Yeah. So, Jim, I mean, there's so much that we could unpack and talk about. I'm kind of like being a fanboy right now because, we met at ADR last year. Saul says, I'm going to have Jim Terrell come over and Super Dave. I'm like, okay, cool. I knew you by name. I knew that, about the QuickBlade. I didn't know a lot about you. Then I was researching this last night, and I was telling Julie, what I was finding out. And I go, man, I'm starting to get a little nervous about talking to Jim now. Like, this is like I had no idea. What I find out is my knowledge about paddling is just this big, right? So now it's growing into more stuff. But I'm telling Julie, like, hey, Jim did this, and she goes, he's coming to the house, and I go, yeah. She goes, fuck, I better start cleaning the house. So, anyways, take us through the beginning. Like Joe and I like to always find out the why, right? The why, and how did you get involved in paddling, and I don't know, how did it all start? Well,
that's why I brought this right here. This gives you an idea when I started paddling. So this is a paddle my dad built I like to say he built it for me, but he actually built it for my older sister. And then I inherited it when she grew out of it and got a bigger one. Mm-hmm. I ended up with her paddle. But the story goes that he made it for me. And you can see the date on here, 1968. So I was born in 65. So that gives you an idea when I started canoe paddling, first of all. But canoeing started out for me as...
Can I see?
Yeah. Sitting in the canoe with... it was a family sport. So we grew up in the canoe capital of the world, Milford, Ohio. Mm-hmm. Of course, everybody knows that. And believe it or not, in the 60s and 70s, canoe racing, downriver canoe racing was quite popular at that time. There were races in my hometown as well as other towns within a 4 or 5 hour drive from us. So marathon canoe racing is how I started my canoe racing career. My mom and dad signed me up for my first canoe race when I was 6. It was 1971. And I raced with my neighbor who was 13, probably like twice my size. Mm-hmm. And we got a second place trophy, like a legit trophy. And I remember being so proud of that trophy. And I think there was only 3 or 4 canoes in the race, actually. But we did beat at least 1 or 2 other canoes. But I was so proud of that trophy. And I remember that was kind of my first introduction to racing canoes. So most of these races would be longer races, which were too long for me at the time. I was pretty young. But my dad would take my sisters and I along, and they usually would have some sprint races for the kids afterwards, kind of like, you know, the short races we have in the outrigger world and whatnot. So we started jumping into these races, and they have C4, you know, like where they take a 2-man canoe and then 4 kids pile in there and race. And they would do 4-man backwards, 4-man tug of war, 4-man, you know, we used to even race up. There was a race in Illinois where they used to smear Vaseline on a bunch of watermelons and throw them in the water, and you'd race up there and try and get that slippery watermelon into the canoe and back. And there was always, you know, a handful of watermelons, about 20 canoes all battling for it. So just to make it fun for the kids. And I remember the most fun thing about going to the races at that time was the camping and meeting other kids and throwing frisbees and just whatever games we came up with.
I was going to say, you're making it sound like summer camp, you know, like we'd see in the movies.
Yeah. So we would pack up the vans, and, you know, the families would show up. And there was a family from Michigan at the time, the Barton family, which, if you know Greg Barton, who founded Epic Kayaks. So he and his older brother were like idols to me as a kid. And then in my hometown was a guy named Roland Mullen, who was like every kid's idol. And Roland just recently passed away from lung cancer, of all things, just a few months ago, actually. But he was my dad's age, and we met him when we were young kids. And I remember when I was 11, it was the 1976 Olympics, and we watched the opening ceremonies. And I remember, there's Roland, you know, like. And I remember from that time as a kid, it's like, okay, that's what I want to do. I want to go to the Olympics for canoeing.
So you knew early on.
Yeah. And I was never pushed by my parents. I mean, my parents made opportunities for us, and I, you know, did all the sports in school. Like I played football, I wrestled, I ran track, played baseball. I was terrible at it. Played basketball. I wasn't very good at that either. But over time, I started realizing that the sports I migrated to and what I liked were the individual sports, you know. And like I liked running, I liked cross-country skiing, I like paddling, and so paddling was the one thing that I just truly loved to do. Like aside from competing, I just enjoyed it. You know, I enjoyed being outside. And in the Midwest, you know, we would drive down to Kentucky and paddle these rivers that we'd never seen before, and you never knew what was around the next turn. So it was kind of like, you know, you're exploring as a kid. So these races would be, say, 10-mile races and whatnot when we were teenagers, and then at that time seemed pretty far, you know, for like, you know, 12, 13-year-old kids.
Especially if you don't know where you're going, right?
Which reminds me of a really funny story. They used to start the kids' races off first, you know, and hope the adults would catch you and just kind of keep everybody together.
All finish at the same time or
close
to.
That was the plan anyway.
Right.
So we were at a race in Kentucky where the organizer put it on and had no idea how fast my buddy and I were. And we got to the finish before they had a chance to put the flags up and like be there for I guess we just passed it.
Oh no!
And we just kept going and going. We had the water, and like it was like, all right, something's not right here. And we started waiting, you know, and no one was coming.
Right.
Then we started getting kind of scared, you know, and like we were probably 13, 14 years old. And finally we said, I think we must have passed the finish somehow. So we pulled over, found the farmer, and he ended up giving us a ride back. And it's like threw the canoe on top of the pickup truck. It's like the thing you tell kids never to do, like don't ever catch a ride with a stranger. But this is long before cell phones, right? So and we were there with some friends, parents. So like you know, you couldn't you know, make this story up. It was pretty funny. But yeah, I remember paddling through tornadoes and, you know, all kinds of stuff as kids. You know, be going, all of a sudden you could hear the tornado coming, and you had to find shelter under a bridge or something. And but that was always an experience and good fun. And then, but things led to, you know, one thing to another, and we found out about a national team that was going to go to the World Championships for Junior World Championships in Bulgaria. So I went to the trials. You know, my parents drove me there, and and I ended up winning the trials, made the team. And I'm thinking I'm going to go over there. I'm the best kid in the U.S. You know, I'm going to do really well. And I remember just getting my butt handed to me. I mean, these guys in Europe were just another level. I mean, it's a big sport in Eastern Europe, particularly at the time. And
I think Hungary, right?
And Russia, the Soviet Union at the time.
It was Soviet Union,
which was, you know, Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, all those countries now that they all do canoeing there. So, but at that time, Larry Kane, a friend of mine from Canada that's still racing now, he does a lot of stand-up now, he won those Junior Worlds. So I was 16 at those Junior Worlds. He was 18, and he ended up winning. So I realized, okay, a Westerner can
compete
win this.
And win,
you know? So I looked up to Larry Kane as like one of my idols as a kid too. And then just started training, you know. So that was in 1981, and then I had 2 years later, went back for my second Junior World Championships. I did much better. Didn't medal, but went to Europe that season and did well at some European Cup races and whatnot. And then, you know, kind of huckered down and graduated from high school in '83, and the Olympic trials were that spring of '84, like, you know, after the year I graduated. And I just barely made the Olympic team in '84, and I ended up being a spare in '84. I didn't get to compete here in LA.
That's the LA one, right?
Yeah, and the canoeing was up at Lake Casitas in Santa Barbara. So
It wasn't at Marine Stadium?
no,
Oh,
it
wow.
was in Lake Casitas, which is you can't paddle there normally. It's a
It's a reservoir, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they got special permission in '84 to do it there, and the rowing was there as well. And so that was a cool experience. And then the rest is history. Then I went on to do 3 more Olympics after that, and each time I took a short hiatus, because you don't make money canoe racing,
Right?
As most of you might know.
Yeah.
Even there might be in some countries where you get, if you're on the national team, you get taken care of a little bit, but in the U.S. it was one of those sports where you do it for the love of the sport, certainly not for the money.
Right.
And if you're fortunate enough, you can get some private sponsors, or try and get your own sponsors and people that can kind of help foot the bill or help you out, or if your family can help and whatnot. So yeah, I had a pretty fortunate career, and when I look back on it, I was on the Olympic team at just the right time. We had Greg Barton on our team, who won a bronze in '84. So the way it worked is if you won medals in your sport, the sport got money, and that was used for both canoe and kayak. So we had paid coaches, like we had originally a Polish coach, Paul, and then he hired another Polish coach, George, or we called him George Jerzy Jekovic, and we had a couple Hungarian coaches that coached me later. We had Hungarian canoe coaches, which were quite good. Csaba Santos, and then Laszlo Budaj, who was Thomas Budaj's brother. So when you're on the national team, we got at least our housing taken care of, and a budget to go to Europe and all that, which the kids nowadays, they have to foot that bill all themselves.
Right.
There's really no money. So if you're sitting out there with some money, you want to help some kids get to the Olympics, think about that. It's like it's not a cheap sport like all sports now.
Well, even we're kind of looking at financing. Or I'm helping indirectly. I'm helping the coaches for the Samoa team. And I have family in Samoa, so we're talking about that and the cost of flying down there and doing that. Right. So airfare is a couple $1,000, and they're looking at hotel rooms down there that are $400 a night. So it just adds up. And so luckily, my family has a lot of property down there. They do really well for themselves down there, and they're helping put guys up. So we're putting, 18 or 20 guys in a house, and we're just gonna, sleep on top of each other. But it'll cut the cost for these guys to just get down there, because, we've talked about this before. Paddling is doesn't pay the bills for most, and it's not a hobby. It's a lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
You have to really
Big
love
difference.
it.
But we love it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
love
love
it.
it.
Do
for
what
sure.
it takes. Yeah.
It pays for itself in different ways, right?
Yeah.
So, just as a quick side question about the competing, especially on a national level and a world level, how political was that for you going through that whole deal? Did you let your paddling talk for you, in an aspect of, showing where you deserve to be and how you belong with the team? Or is there a lot of...
It wasn't really that political. Each year, like going into an Olympic year, they would establish the selection criteria, and it varied from Olympics to Olympics. So, like my first Olympic team in '84, there was 4 events. Singles 500,000 meters, and doubles 500,000, which were the 4 events on the Olympic roster at the time. And you got points in each of those 4 events. And the interesting thing is that of the and we knew we could take a maximum of 5 canoe paddlers for the U.S. All 5 of us, none of our partners made it.
Really?
Just the way it sorted out, yeah.
Huh.
Like 2 of the best guys in the 2-man at the time were brothers, Bruce and Barry Merritt. And Bruce was a fair bit faster than his older brother Barry at the time. So he made it, but his brother didn't get enough points in the singles to make it. And then my partner was almost twice my age at the time, Jay Kearney. And he beat me in the 1,000, but I beat him in the 500 by 1 more place than he beat me by in the 1,000. I ended up being just barely making the team, but then he didn't. And then another guy from New York made it, and his partner Jurka Batlik, who lives here, just missed making it. And so it was just interesting how it all worked out. But the 5 of us then had to regroup, and I was the only guy that made the team that's used to being in the back of the C2, the 2-man. And the other guys are all used to being in the front. So I'm thinking, I'm going to end up racing both C2s, because I was a righty, and the 2 guys that paddle C1 that were faster than me were both righties also.
I see.
So they were going to race the C1s, and I thought, I'll end up racing both C2s. But at the end of the day, they each wanted 1 C1 race, 1 C2 race. and I ended up losing a couple race-offs near the end, going right into the Olympics. I didn't get to compete, but I was only 18 at the trials, and then I was 19 at the Olympics. So fortunately, I had enough time to come back and make a few more Olympic teams.
Yeah, very cool.
So when you're going through this Olympics, I know as an Olympic athlete, you're pretty focused, right? Like on your goals and what's going on within your sport. But I gotta ask, like during this time, this is like early mid '80s, right? Do you know of outrigger canoe paddling? Like, what is your?
Oh, that's a good question.
What's your perspective on it?
I first learned about outrigger canoeing. My partner Jay Kearney, who I mentioned earlier, won the Molokai race. He was in that crew with Billy Whitford.
Offshore.
In 81, 82.
Okay.
And I remember I used to go to his house in Lexington, Kentucky and train all the time. And that's actually where I first met Willie Reichenstein. Willie was living at Jay's house too. He was getting his
citizenship?
No, he was going to school at UK getting his master's degree in exercise physiology, kinesiology, I believe. But that's when I met Willie. And so I've known Willie probably longer than anybody else out here because I met him a couple years before he moved to California. But anyway, so I got sidetracked there with
I was asking about like what was your perspective on outrigger paddling back then?
So Willie actually raced for offshore too, like shortly after that too. Yep. So I knew about it, and then we came out here for a training camp in 1984, and we were staying at UC Irvine campus, which is pretty new dorms, and Jurka Baulik's mom ran the cafeteria there.
I met him recently.
Yeah,
that guy's hilarious.
Yeah, so Jurka's mom ran the cafeteria, so they arranged for us to train here, and Sheila Conover was on the team, and she went to Newport Harbor High School. She grew up here in Newport Beach. So they kind of helped coordinate this camp going into we came out maybe 3 or 4 weeks before the Olympics. And on it was around the 4th of July when we got here, just before the 4th of July, because on the 4th of July, we went down to the Coast Guard station, and Sheila arranged it, and Billy, and we got in the canoes and paddled over to the dunes to watch the fireworks.
Okay.
And we're like, this is really cool. The first thing we all said when we looked at, what are those things on the side? Can we take those off?
I mean, because yours is single hole, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, those are just going to slow us down. What are those outriggers there for? And it wasn't until I did my first outrigger canoe race a few years later when I realized, I guess those things are necessary. Yeah. Like when we got in the ocean,
especially in the ocean,
because we always had such good balance. I'm like, we could high kneel this thing, no problem, balance it without that outrigger thing on there.
That's funny.
But so they built the NAC in 1988, and I think the building was kind of starting to go in 87, but they kind of opened up, I think, in the spring of 88. And then one of my friends here found out that they were interviewing for the assistant director position. So I came up, and we had a training camp in 88 in San Diego. Okay. So I drove up to Newport and interviewed for this position, and it was right after the Olympics. We were in Hawaii at Kevin Olds' house. I mentioned Kevin earlier. And I got the phone call, hey, you got the job. Like, when can you be here? And I'm like, well, when do you want me there?
So is that what brought you from the Midwest to California?
So that's amazing.
Assistant director at NEC.
Yeah, so I packed up my little pickup truck. I had a little 4-cylinder Dodge D50 silver pickup truck.
Yeah.
Drove out here. My dad helped me drive out, and then he flew home. And that's what brought me out here in November of 88. All right, we arrived on Halloween. I remember that. And then I started work the next day.
That's good. So I was born in April of 88.
Okay.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Jim and I have the same birthday, April 20th.
What? Oh, you're April 20th?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
What are you, April?
26.
26.
Around same week.
Yeah.
We're all Taurus, right?
Yep. Team Taurus.
Drink to that.
Yeah. Cheers. So crazy. I was going to ask.
It's like perfect, timing.
It was. I was going to ask the question of what brought you out to California and what year that was, but it answered it perfectly.
Yeah.
That's cool.
88, yeah. So, and I moved out here, one of the big appealing things was we have the weather that's, you can paddle literally
year-round.
every day of the year. And it's a great place to train. In fact, in the 90s, there was a lot of Europeans that would come and train at the NAC. The Swedes would come early on, and then some of the Germans, and now the Slovaks come out, and Jurka helps coordinate some of that actually. But.
So I know we're talking about your Olympics. I gotta share real quick how I met. Not necessarily how I met Jim, but how I was introduced to quick blade paddles. I think you're gonna like this story. So I paddled up in San Francisco, It's for San Francisco Outrigger. And I paddled with Josh Banfield. And so I got to know the Banfield family a little bit more back then. And, you know, he was a really good ambassador for Quick Blade. And I did my first Molokai channel at 19 with SFOCC, and we had all Quick Blades. We had we were using your Kanaha back then.
Kanaha,
yeah.
So
I loved it.
Charlie Banfield was
Josh's dad. Yeah.
You know, it was before I really had dealers in California. My first dealer ever for my paddles was Island Paddler. Mm-hmm. And Sam Couch actually took one of the paddles over there and kind of left it with them on consignment, and then they sold it and phoned me up. Hey, we sold that crazy.
Can we have another one? Yeah.
It was a scooped paddle, kind of ahead of its time.
It was light, you know.
It was an all carbon paddle, I believe. And so we started making more and more outrigger paddles, and because everything I made up until then was just direct to the end user.
Right.
And Quick Blade started with high kneel canoe paddles originally. And then we started making kayak paddles. There was a company back east, Van Duzen, that was making all the kayaks. And they started making the paddles, the winged kayak paddles. But then they got out of making the paddles, so the guys were kind of left to only buy paddles from Europe because there was no really other paddle manufacturer in the U.S. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we started making them. Peter Newton, one of the kayakers on the team, got involved, and we kind of tweaked one of the designs we liked, and we called it the Neutron. And that was the first Quick Blade kayak paddle. And we actually... that's kind of how my business grew a little bit to where we actually almost sold 100 paddles in 1 year. I thought that was a lot.
Right.
And then we started making the outrigger paddles, and it started growing more and more from there. And then it was stand-up paddles where it really started to take off.
Just blew up, right? Yeah. Like 2008, 10.
Earlier. Yeah, like 2000. My daughter, she was just a baby when we started making the stand-up paddles.
Okay.
18 years ago, yeah. So back 2005.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that was back 07 when I was introduced. I was like to Quick Blade. I was like, oh, this is interesting. California. Oh, this is cool. Yeah. I've never seen this before. Coming from Hawaii.
Yeah. So going back to Charlie Banfield, he was a big Quick Blade fan because Josh got into C1 high kneel canoe.
Yes.
So after the '96 Olympics, I moved back to Cincinnati for a couple of years to visit family and catch up with friends again, and I started building C1s, like Olympic canoes, and with my friend Roland's mold, he had a mold for a C1. So Charlie called me up, and I made a boat for Josh. Nice. And that's how I kind of got to know Charlie, and we connected, and I started making him canoe paddles for the canoe, and then naturally started buying my outrigger paddles and promoting them in the Bay Area.
Totally, yeah.
And he never wanted to make any money. I kept telling him, like, I'll sell them to you this price, and then this is my retail price.
Make a little bit on it. Yeah.
But he never wanted to make. I think he would just sell them for whatever he bought them from me for. So everybody was getting them at a pretty good price in the Bay Area too. So we got a pretty good following up in the Bay Area for a while. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the Banfield family. Yeah, they were great ambassadors. Yeah. Not just for Quick Blade, but just paddling in general.
And the younger brother Justin got really good in outrigger canoe too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen those guys in a while, but
yeah, me neither.
I know Josh ended up having several kids, so I'm sure he's a pretty busy family man.
Yeah, he's definitely got his own 6-man crew.
Yeah.
So let's talk about paddle design and your design and stuff for a minute as we're going into this a little bit. That I read all over the internet that your nickname is Mad Scientist. So your design and how you push something like the Stingray, right? So, I mean, we go into the V drive that you built and the evolution of that into something like this. How, over the years, do you think your way through these kind of things, and how did it end up at the Stingray?
That's a good question. It's how do I not talk myself out of doing them a certain way?
Sure.
But, it's interesting. I've always looked at paddles, trying to find a better shape or a better way to do it. And when we started making paddles from composites, it opened up the door to do a lot more things shape-wise than when you made paddles out of wood. Mm-hmm. And so I played around years ago with like scooped. So the winged kayak paddle was invented by the Swedes in '85, and that kind of revolutionized kayaking. That, to me, bent shaft paddles. Gene Jensen was the first guy to make a bent shaft, as far as I know, race paddle, and the marathon canoe guys came over and won Molokai with bent shaft paddles. Before that, they were all straight.
Straight, right.
Yeah, and then handles on paddles.
T-tops, yep.
So, and a lot of you already know the story behind that. There was pictures from years ago where they had handles, but then they went away from handles, and then they kind of didn't want handles on them. But then I think it was Billy Whitford and some of his crew that came over with the handles, and they allowed the handles back in on outrigger paddles. But bent shaft paddles became popular, and the blades have gone from big to small. To, like I've seen all the changes over the years. I mean, I've been paddling for 50-some years.
Yeah.
So bent shaft paddles really revolutionized marathon canoeing, and that happened in the 70s, or even like late 60s. So when the wing paddle was designed in '85, it revolutionized kayaking overnight. Like within a couple of years, like everybody converted to the wing. And you literally saw like a 2 to 3, if not 4%, like drop in times just from that change in paddle design, which was huge, right? So we made. I was always obsessed with trying to make scoop paddles that were good for canoeing. But the problem is with the kayak paddle, you have a right blade and a left blade that only do right and left side strokes. With canoeing, you have to have a blade that works good on both sides. So so I had to tweak, put the scoop more towards the top so the paddle still had a good exit. And we had some paddles in when Billy moved offshore over to NAC, we were all paddling there with some paddles I made. I think it was the year 2000 or 99 or 2000. And we were winning races and going fast. But I kept getting complaints that, I don't like the way it exits. Like people are complaining about the exit. I'm like, they're working, they're going fast.
Right.
I finally got tired of hearing people complain about it, so I just went to making a more traditional blade, which I think the original one was called I think the all-carbon version was called the Tornado, and then we made a hybrid version of it, which we called the Hoppa. It was like a carbon blade with a...
Was this back when your logo had like a saw blade on it?
Yeah, exactly. So this was early 2000.
Yeah.
It was about 2002, 2003 maybe, I think, when I started making the Kanaha.
Okay.
I think we had the Kaivi, which was a real flat blade before that, and a thicker one. And those are kind of popular. And then we went to the Kanaha, and that was, and to this day, still we have a lot of people ask for the Kanaha.
Yeah,
we
great paddle.
But there's 2 other models we make now. It's like once you add a new model, like you got to take something off the menu. It just gets to be
right. Too much. The catalog.
Too many offerings where guys are scratching their head and they can't make up their mind.
Right.
So anyway, there was several years now with outrigger. I just kind of gave up and said, look, I'm just going to make what people are asking me to make, and I'm not going to try and convince them what I think is going to work would be any better. But this idea has actually been on my mind for a couple of years. I've got a lot of these great ideas, but it's like all comes down to time and money. How much money are you going to throw at something, and how much of a risk is it to invest in it? And the tooling, the way we do the paddles. Once you do go to production, there's several $1,000s involved in tooling up to do them the way we do them. So you want to make sure you're designing something where you're going to sell at least a few hundred of them.
Right.
You got to factor that cost into the final product. It has to absorb it. But so anyway, so this Stingray is my latest creation, and you can see it's very short in comparison to how wide it is. So it's wider than your traditional paddle. This is actually 11.5 inches wide, where most paddles are maybe 10 inches would be a big one. 9 to 9.5 is kind of average. But the theory is, without getting too much into it, it takes half as long to put this blade in and half as long to take it out because it's half as long, right? So you have more contact with the water for longer, and then the time in the air is a little quicker, just from the time the blade, once it comes out, it's out quick.
Right.
It's back in quick. And even though it's small, it's only 72 square inches. When you use this paddle, if you were to blindfold yourself, you would swear it was like 100 square inches or more, like if not like 110 square inches.
Right.
And if you also notice, it's a couple degrees more angle than your typical straight shafted paddle would be. Most of them are like 10 degrees on the average, I'd say, and this one's 12. And it acts like a wing, so when it's going into the water, the idea is it's even though it's small, it still wants to try and drive forward. So if you're patient on the catch, it will actually pull you before you're actually pulling on the blade.
Interesting.
And you don't bury it to here, you bury it deeper. So,
right.
And you know how like the deeper you stick your paddle, it gets, it's like paddling with a heavier gear, like a heavier gear on a bike. When it's at a positive angle, it wants to keep kind of traveling forward in the water.
Yeah.
And then as you go by the blade's in theory or ideally it's staying where it is, and you're going past the submerged blade, right? That's why you go somewhere. And then once it's at a negative angle and it wants to come up, it acts like a wing the other direction. Actually, is
lifts itself
going
out
forward. Well, as you're bringing it up to the surface, it's also wanting to kind of go up to the surface in a forward direction. So even though it's smaller, we found our distance per stroke hasn't changed from a bigger blade, but we're able to get 1, if not 2 strokes a minute more at the same effort. So if you go from 50 strokes a minute to 51 strokes a minute, and you don't give up any of the length per stroke,
Right.
you're going 2% faster.
Right.
There. One more stroke. So that's why I think it's working better and going.
Yeah.
A lot of us are going faster with it. It takes, most people adjust to it pretty quickly. Some don't start seeing the difference for like a week or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we were doing the broadcast for the California Va'a series or Va'a California series, I'm correcting myself. I think I compared it to, so in the paddling world we say it's like pole vaulting, right?
Yeah.
And I've tried this paddle before, and I was like, oh, it honestly feels like you're pole vaulting. You set it, and kind of like what you're saying, you're moving before you're actually pulling.
Yeah.
And but I think during the broadcast I said pogo stick. But anyway, I meant pole vaulting. So if anyone, I just had to kind of correct myself from
Pogo
back then.
sticking, pole vaulting.
But you said something interesting earlier about kayak paddles. So the wing. So it almost looks like I don't know if our viewers can see that, but the whole blade is a dihedral basically, which is fascinating. But it almost looks like there's 2 scoops, right?
Yeah.
You kind of see that, right?
Like raisin brands.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting.
Like Jim said, it's got to work on both sides,
So
right?
the dihedral helps the exit actually. It helps make the blade more stable.
Stabilizes, right? Well,
Yeah, when they get that wide, if you
I remember talking to Mike about that one. Yeah.
if you saw the molds I made to get here, I made like 9 prototypes, and that's one of the things I kept playing with was the angle of the dihedral, basically how much the blades
Right.
like this. But yeah, you're exactly right. I call this camber when the blade
Yes.
has a little bit.
Yeah,
this way.
it's double.
Like if you look at any rowing oar, they're always curved because they're going. When they plant and go away from the hull, they're traveling in an arc essentially. So, in my opinion, like having a little bit of camber always works better than a blade that's like flat, straight. But that's of course up for debate. But yeah, we did play around with that dihedral angle.
Yeah.
So, and I actually went so far as to make a blade that was 13.5 inches wide by only like 6 inches tall. So it was like
Right.
looked like a hoe.
Yeah.
Cucumber or something.
And that one, believe it or not, worked really good once it was like in the water, but it got to be a little awkward on the recovery to where I also said, okay, I'm getting to the point where it's just so radical, like no one will ever accept that it
Right.
even has a chance of working. So when people look at this, their first reaction is to laugh or what is that, or those are so weird. But it's amazing how many people have tried it and like, oh, wow, I really like it. And it's been my best selling paddle, like hands down ever from its, when we first launched them in January. The first time I showed them was at Hano, end of January. And I got some really good paddlers to actually buy one there. Like Steve Sinkus got one April, and I could probably rattle off a handful of people that bought the first ones. And then I got one to Will. I've sponsored Will. Will used to make. He and his dad Willie used to do my wood shafts when I lived there in Costa Mesa.
Oh, really?
When I was in aerospace, and I was too busy to do everything myself. They were making the shafts and handles. So I used to sponsor Will when he was a little kid, and then so I phoned him up. Hey, I got this paddle I want you to try, and then so he goes, yeah, I'll try it, and he really liked it, and he actually texted me one day. He was all excited. He cut like a minute off his 4.5 mile.
Yeah.
Time trial. And he's like,
I've talked to him about it. He goes, man, I'm sold on it. He goes, I haven't tried it on the V1 yet, but on the OC1, I will use it.
Yeah. And I sent one over to Miles just before Miles moved to Hawaii last year. I met Miles at NEC, and I said, "Who is this kid? He's like super fast."
Plastic bag
and young.
So he had already had a quick blade. So I said, "Yeah, let me give you a new blade." So I gave him the Ono Lava, which was our most popular paddle, and he used that for a couple seasons. And then now I sent him him and Travis Grant, who I've sponsored for years through stand up, and they both really liked it. And Miles raced the
solo with it.
Yeah, he was
the KV solo with it.
Top 10.
And Travis raced with his, but I talked to Will. I asked him if he used his, but he said he's still not comfortable in the surf with it, so he opted to go with the old school blade.
Did you hear about that nickname that Miles was coined?
They call it the plastic bag.
The plastic bag.
Yeah.
Micah gave him that nickname.
Yeah, it's always moving, and right when you think you're going to be able to grab it, it always moves a little bit further.
Oh, Miles.
Yeah,
Miles,
yeah.
the plastic bag.
Yeah,
He calls him Kilo, right? Or like
Yeah.
Miles.
kid's fast, man.
Yeah, he is quick. And that when I see a kid when they have that natural speed, like endurance is trainable. Mm-hmm. But
Yeah.
you can't make somebody quick. It takes a lot more work and time. And
Yeah.
coached a lot of kids.
He just
when
naturally
when I
has it.
see somebody that's got that kind of speed, I can tell like, okay, they're going to be good. Like once they dial in pacing and get all the experience it takes to, a lot of why Danny does so good is he's been racing so long, like he knows what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
he doesn't make the
Doesn't
same
make mistakes.
Yeah,
Yep. That's what it comes down to, right? The people,
super
ones
experience.
that make the less mistakes.
Yeah, half the reason I do well anymore is because I've done it wrong the first time so many times.
So you spoke about the design. Can you explain the carbon fiber? I've never seen this type of texture, like these X's or diamonds, however you're looking at it.
Yeah, that's top secret. I can't tell you.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know if the camera's picking that up. But
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
So carbon fiber, they weave it into different patterns. So
Yep.
the majority of the carbon in the shaft is actually what we call unidirectional carbon. It's just carbon fibers that are oriented in one direction. But the ply that you see on the outside, I call that the cosmetic ply.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's a custom weave. We tend to get our stuff copied frequently. And so I try and find custom weaves that kind of look unique and different.
I see. Yeah.
And I have one supplier that makes their own pre-preg. So they also weave their own, they have their own looms to weave the carbon. But
Awesome.
a lot of times I'll find, there used to be a weaver here in Anaheim called Textile Products, which we used to get a lot of custom weaves from. And I like the hex carbon too.
Yeah, the hex, the honeycomb.
Right.
That's
so
always been my favorite.
The idea
of yours.
was to make it look like there's a honeycomb core in
Yeah.
the paddle, but it's actually a custom weave in that outer ply
That's cool.
that is in a hexagon shape. So yeah. But that one's pretty unique looking. Even the grip has that.
Yeah, it has that too.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of sexy.
Yeah, it
So,
is.
so when there was that viral video of that dude that broke this paddle he's on a Hawaii Chiron, right? You and I were talking about it on the water that one
Yeah.
day.
And he paddles with his slippers all the way back in.
That was
Yeah.
that was painful for me to watch that. So when we made the original prototypes, we tested them here in Newport quite a bit.
Yeah.
But we were in the harbor a lot, not really doing a lot of downwind.
Dynamic kind of paddling. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I watched that video and watched the way he was paddling, like paddles pretty
Probably not setting it
Aggressive.
right.
aggressive.
And then-
Yeah, aggressively,
And
yeah.
and it was probably a blessing in disguise that he broke one, because he not only broke one, but he went back to Island Paddler because Pat Vaughn knows him and got a hold of him, I
Okay.
think, and said, hey, and I tried to reach out to him like, hey, we'll take care of it. Don't worry.
Right.
It's the first production run, but they were the first handful that had shipped out. And I panicked a little bit, so I tested one in my shop, and I was able to break it easier than I should have. And it just turns out there was some unidirectional doublers in there that we missed in the layup on the first run, but we've got it corrected now, and now it's like super strong. But
Nice.
I actually recalled the first batch and got all of them back from everybody I knew I got them to. And we've been reinforcing them, and I've been selling those now as demos, that have been reinforced.
Right, yeah.
When I go to races, I'll take them, and I've been selling them a little bit on a discount. And now I've been through most all of them. I think there's still a handful I still need to get back before they end up being vulnerable to breaking. But now we've made a couple hundred since then and haven't had
Yeah.
any issues, knock on wood. But
Yeah.
when I saw that he got a replacement and actually broke a second one, as far as I know, he broke a couple. So that had me concerned. And then one of my good friends back at Washington Canoe Club, Martin Lowenfish, who's been paddling forever.
Yeah.
I sent them a couple demos to test, and it had been passed around quite a bit. And eventually he broke one in practice. And that's when I realized, okay, I got to get these back and reinforce them. So.
Well, I mean, we've all broken paddles.
Yeah, I hate to see it. One broken paddle hurts your reputation more than a couple hundred good ones. But on the other side, it's like, well, a lot of people know about that paddle now, because
Right.
it kind of went viral, and
Right.
everyone's like, what the heck is
What
that
is
thing?
that thing?
That
Yeah.
short, that small little.
I don't think
Publicity.
it was a question of the paddle, but you can see him. He's really aggressive on the catch. He's really hitting it hard. And
Yeah.
I mean, you could be with any paddle, and that could happen to you.
Yeah, but we pride ourselves on making stuff light and strong enough to hold up to anything. And then, so when I saw that, whether he hit the Yaku or it doesn't matter, like people are going to hit the Yaku,
Right.
It's just part of paddling. And they're going to fall on it. They're going to check it hard. They're going to do all those things. And back when we were doing wood shafted paddles, we used to have a few breakages. And then over the years, you learn how to what woods to use and how to orient the grain and do the things that you hope will make your stuff hold up.
Especially the negative force, right? With the wooden paddles, when people fly their arm and they lean on it, right?
Yeah, we always noticed going into regatta season when they uni.
Yes, and
we'd
they
have
pry.
Yeah, when
Right,
and then that back pressure on the blade.
Yeah.
is when they would snap.
Yeah.
And once I realized that that was happening, we realized, okay, because I used to make them only strong in one direction. Right. I realized no, with checking on them and uni, they got to be strong both directions.
Yeah.
So now when we do static testing, we static test both directions.
Yeah.
So. And we do an impact test. There's a lot of tests we do actually for durability and strength. Because stand-up paddle surfs, the paddles that when they break, it's usually from impact. And the guy will just be paddling into a wave afterwards, and they'll snap. But usually it's the wave before when they were in a wipeout where it got compromised or hit or fractured.
When I had or hosted Air Tahiti here in 2018, Huahine, who makes those paddles in Tahiti.
Is that the one with the Rasta stripe on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they sponsored Air Tahiti, right? And
Yep.
coming across the channel, they broke 3.
Ooh. Yeah.
Oh.
And then they made us go back and pick up all the blades. They made us go back and pick them all up, and they took them all back to Tahiti with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Data.
a trip. Well,
R&D.
Yeah, I just think from I mean, I don't know. It was pretty wild. I've never seen that before, but it was pretty crazy. Yep.
Yeah. So
But I mean, needless to say, I mean, you can tell how much care you put into your product. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, we try. Always making a rounder wheel, I say.
Right.
And we do pride ourselves on the cosmetics and the details and the edge shape, and there's a lot of little subtle things that go on with the paddle that.
Well, it's you're breaking the status quo, right? It's so interesting. Like, this looks like it came from another planet.
Yeah, wait till you see the T-shirt we just designed. It'll be out soon, but it's pretty funny.
That's cool.
I'll get you one of the first ones.
Oh yeah, all right. For sure. Is it gonna make me look like I have love handles, kind of like the paddle does? It's like it's gonna come out on the.
Sounds like my kind of T-shirt.
You'll see.
Right on.
So, something I wanted to bring up too while we were talking about, and I kind of mentioned it to you, was your adventure in the Yukon last year, and talking a little bit about it when we were sitting together at the river at Parker. I was just fascinated, and I know what Micah told me when he came back, because I didn't even know what was happening. Micah's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be up in Alaska or in the Yukon for a little while." I'm like, "For what?" So we're doing this race, 440 some odd miles, and Jim Terrell's doing it, and we're going to go up there and do it. I'm like, wait a minute, like, explain this to me. Like, so I kind of did a little bit of research about it, and then, talking about the river, what a wild adventure.
Yeah, that was a great experience. And
would you say one of the hardest paddling things you've done, or
yeah, mentally?
Well,
it's just different. It's so different, and it was scary. It was high water and it was cold. And let me back up to how we got into this thing. So,
do you know about it, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
My friend Chris Parker from Australia, Sup Racer, he did it on a stand-up paddleboard a few years ago. And he was just telling me how it's the hardest thing he ever did, but it was such a great experience. And you hallucinate, and I'm like, I'm thinking, I don't want any business doing something like that. When I was a kid, I used to laugh at the people that would do like Texas water safari and these big long distance races. 'Cause I was like, oh, they can't go fast, so they got to go far.
Right.
You beat me too. I remember we had that conversation.
Now I'm that guy. I'm the guy. I can't go fast,
I'm
but I
the
can
old
go
guy.
far.
I can't go fast anymore.
But I
Might
got
as well
one
go long.
speed. I can just kind of keep going.
Yeah.
And I love paddling, right? Like to do that race, you have to just love paddling. And I was watching a podcast with Bart DeSwart, who's kind of world renowned for like all these long distance races. And I remember in one of his interviews or one of his podcasts talking about how when they asked like, why do you do it? And his answer was something like, everything in your life just feels easier, after you do something like this. I remember when my daughter Addie asked me, "Daddy, why are you doing it?" I go, "Well, because my friend said everything in your life should feel easier after you do this, right?" So anyway, I was starting to get interested, and Chris was really pushing for me to do it. Well, we looked into borrowing one of the more popular divisions now is the C4 division. It's a 4-man open canoe, and it's a U.S. Canoe Association spec that they use. Basically, it's a 23-foot canoe by a certain beam, and there's a height minimums and weight minimums and width at the 4 feet from the back. And so we were going to rent a boat, but they were all taken. So I go, well, shoot. I called my friend back east that makes them, John Diller from Savage River Canoes. And he said, I can probably get you a boat and maybe get it up to General Clinton up in upstate New York for you by Memorial Day. And the race is in June, right?
Right.
I'm thinking, it's a little tight. And what if he doesn't come through? And, and I'm thinking, well, shit, we'll just build one, And so I went and bought all the lumber at Austin Hardwoods in Santa Ana and drew up the plans and figured out how much wood I need and drove up there, and that was right when COVID hit. So I'd bought the lumber when all of a sudden they shut down everything, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And a couple of my workers, so it was a perfect project for me to just start going, I said, great, this is great. I got something to do.
Hone in,
and it was great when I needed to run errands. I mean, there was nobody on the road.
Right.
I could get
you could accomplish a lot and
everything I needed quick. And and I just started going on this thing, and the canoe came out beautiful. I mean, I was just so excited, and I got addicted to building this wood strip canoe. I mean, I was into it. I mean, when it was all said and done, I probably had 200 or 300 hours building the canoe.
Jeez.
But then once we started paddling it, and you find out you need a cover, and you need all this other stuff in your canoe to hold the bottles and all that, I probably put another couple hundred hours in it, tricking it all out. And Micah was the guy that came with me. I talked him into coming most mornings to paddle with me. So it was Chris and I.
You guys were bringing that to Willie workouts, I remember.
So it was Chris and I originally.
Good boat weight
and then
following you.
Yeah, and Chris goes, "Hey, we should get Travis." Like, "Oh yeah, Travis would be great." So we phoned up Travis, or Chris talked Travis into doing it. Like, "Hey, we just need one more guy." And I had a couple of people that kind of heard we were doing it that mentioned something about wanting to do it. Well, then Micah comes up to me, "Hey, if you want to do the Yukon, I'm in." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" I go, "You want to do it?" And he goes, "Yeah, I want to do it." And then so I knew I called Travis right away. I go, "Hey, you know Micah, right?" He goes, "Oh yeah, Micah's great." He goes, "He'd be great," And he goes, "We need somebody durable." I go, "Yeah, he's durable."
Yeah.
So we got Micah, and it ended up being just a blast. And I didn't really know Micah all that well yet. I mean,
you got to know him a lot more.
Yeah, I got to know him a lot more.
Yeah.
And he's just hysterical. And it's funny because I could steer. I grew up paddling marathon canoes and steered them. But Micah wanted to steer, and he kept really insisting on steering. I would always come down in the morning and go, "Where do you want to sit?" "I'll steer."
Yeah.
And then nobody wants to sit in the middle because it's so fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I ended up being in the 3-seat when we started off. But I knew Travis could steer, I could steer, Micah could steer, and Chris was going to just sit 2 and be our navigator, right?
Yeah.
Or sit 3, I think was the plan. Well, then Chris got COVID right before, so we ended up picking up.
Chris is you're not sup racer guy.
Oh yeah.
He's like that guy.
So we picked up Ethan Palmer last minute. He was up there to do it at a kayak solo with
Ringer,
and Micah knew him.
Yeah,
and he's a good dragon boat paddler.
And I
didn't realize it, but he used to race sprint kayaks and stuff. Yeah. And, so he worked out great. He was already. I think. Well, the guys here.
He's like a grown-up version of Judson.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's got big beard.
Yeah,
big
blonde, long hair.
Young guy. Yeah. And what sold it for me with him was that he's a search and rescue, cold water rescue guy.
Yeah,
Alaska. And I'm
the guy you want with.
Like, dude, you're in.
Dude, yeah,
I need you.
Yeah,
and so he made me feel a little
just
more
in case.
Okay. Yeah. Good. If the ship's going down, I got one guy that's pretty tough that could maybe bail us.
Get you to the shoreline. Keep you warm.
Yeah, he's probably got the best survival skills of all of us. So, so anyway, but yeah, that race is just the people that do that race and know it. I mean, they just got it dialed, and it's our first time. I'm looking at all the other boats, at their setups and what they got, because I'm just doing it blind.
Yep.
And it turned out we did, I think, a pretty good job preparing all in all. But I think all of our gear was on the heavier side of what the real serious guys do it on. I mean, they had the absolute lightest tent you could possibly have, and the lightest of everything.
It adds up, right?
Do you guys go through inspection?
Oh yeah, you go into it's indoors, and you lay all your stuff out, and they got a whole crew of people that goes through all your stuff, because you have to have 2 complete changes of clothes and a proper rain jacket, because it does rain off and on typically, and it did. And then you wear your PFDs the whole time. So so I got some tips from some people, and we went up there, and oh my gosh, we luckily didn't make any major mistakes. a couple of the guys weren't used to sitting down. Mike and I'd probably been in those seats the longest of anybody. Mm-hmm. Where Trav just jumped in the boat and went for it, right?
And he got shredded.
And his butt got a little chewed up. And so that's what they were complaining about at the first stop, because you start at like noon and you paddle through the night. And there's a 35-mile lake, so you paddle 2.5 hours on the river. Then you got a 35-mile grind across this lake, which was a howling, quartering headwind in the beginning. Then it glassed off for a while and got nice, and then it got to be this like tailwind that picked up towards the end. And then you get into the river, and then that's when it gets really fun, because it starts to get fast. We were averaging 10 to 11 miles an hour on the river.
Ooh, jeez.
And our cruising speed in that boat would be about 6 miles an hour. About 10 kilometers an hour for those of you who don't know miles per hour. And but the river speed, now you're running at, there's a lot of times we were averaging about, because we did the whole 444 miles in 43 hours. So the total average was faster than 10 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. So you're moving, and the whole plan was just, whatever we do, just don't get out of the river. You do all your business, because that's the first thing people ask you. Where are you going to pee? Where are you going to poop? Like in the boat.
We are.
Yeah.
And so we had a couple bail buckets that we used for that business. And then you take all your own food but there are 2 mandatory stops in the middle. You have to stop for 10 hours between 2 stops that are kind of in the middle. They're about 5 hours apart, like in the middle. Mm-hmm. So the first stop we hit in the morning the next day, and we just stopped long enough to get a cheeseburger and stretch, and then I spent the whole time repadding the seats, adding more
canoe
padding.
Yep.
So I didn't sleep at the first stop. So the second 5 hours, there's a section with some pretty big rapids, which you may have seen.
Yeah, on the Instagram.
Yep.
We're hoping to do
what was it called again? I forgot what that.
The Fingers Rapids.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
And there's waves as high as the table here that you go through, and I was was my canoe even going to make it through there? I didn't even know. But and I asked the organizer before. I was a little nervous about those rapids. I said, "Hey, of all the divisions, like which one is the one that typically swamps or capsizes the most?" He just looks at me and goes, "Oh, the C4s." so that was real reassuring. At the end of the race the whole time. But once we got through that, I was like, "Oh, okay. Hopefully, we got the hardest part behind us." We made it through perfectly. Micah did a good job. We just kind of threaded it through there and just did it just right, I guess. So
don't stop paddling.
we survived, and then so the next stop, or getting close, so then I started getting pretty tired. I was taking some goos, and they tell you don't take too many goos; it can mess with your system. So, but I was kind of bonking a little bit, so I took a couple goos because they have some caffeine in them. Well, then I got to the stop, and I couldn't sleep. I don't know if it was the caffeine or what, and I didn't plan well for the sleep. I didn't think about it was going to be pretty
so
bright
outside.
So I didn't have my blackout, things for my eyes. I didn't. You got mosquito repellent on because the bugs are pretty bad. But I slept in my truck, so I don't have proper screening for that. And it was hot, much hotter than I thought it was going to be. So I didn't plan that. Of all the mistakes I made, I think I just didn't plan my sleep very well. So I didn't really sleep. So essentially, I went like almost 60 hours without sleep. So when it's all said and done.
And you hallucinated.
Yeah, definitely hallucinated.
Yeah.
Like every log I saw on the water had
Wow.
you start seeing that's got a squirrel and a bunny on it, and like.
That's probably how this paddle.
Yeah, maybe that's right.
Hey, I'm going to make this paddle. It's going to look like this.
Wild. So you're going to do it again?
It was an expensive trip. Gas was $7 a gallon when we left to go up there.
Yeah.
And since Chris got COVID, he was going to drive with me. So I ended up driving solo up to Canada. I went up through, stopped in Salt Lake City, and then drove up. Got across the border, spent my second night in Lethbridge, just over the border in Canada.
Yeah.
And then I've never been to Banff.
Yeah.
And, all that, so I drove up through there and got some really cool pictures. And I wanted to get
That's Wyoming?
No,
right?
Banff is Canada.
Canada.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
It's right over north of Glacier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just west of Alberta.
It's a national park, right?
Yeah, it's
Banff
beautiful.
National-
Oh, insane.
It's like a Yosemite level.
There's a famous lake there called Lake Louise. And,
Okay.
so my goal was to paddle on Lake Louise.
It was frozen over.
But tourists everywhere, I couldn't get anywhere close to the lake. It was just packed. And then one of the locals sent me up to Bow Lake, farther up the highway, which is beautiful. And I got out there, and but I was by myself, so I didn't paddle, but I wanted to.
Yeah.
And then I went on to Edmonton and picked up Eric, a Swedish guy, a friend of Chris's, who was going to run pit crew for us. So picked him up, and then he helped me drive up the rest.
Oh, cool.
But it was a 5-day drive, and it was over 3,000 miles each way. I think I put 7,000 miles on my truck that trip.
Jeez.
Smokes.
That's so wild.
So 444 miles. How long did it take again?
43 hours, but
43
so
hours.
You start at noon, and we finished in the evening 2 days later. Yeah. And,
And you guys got second, right?
Yeah, second.
Second.
Yeah, fifth overall. I
Fifth
believe.
overall.
Fifth.
Amazing.
There was 2 of the unlimited Voyagers, like 6-man canoes. Ahead of
Okay.
us. And there was 2 guys from Estonia and a K2 that were ahead of us.
Oh, wow.
So there was a K2,
A
a couple
K2?
unlimiteds, and a C4. I think we were fifth
Okay.
overall, something like that. Yeah.
So it's interesting, right? So like the different classes. So you guys are kind of in a class where you can essentially bring the most gear, right? You have the most storage. But like someone like those 2 guys in a K2, there's not a lot to bring.
Yeah,
but they're
well,
moving fast.
They have the hatches and they stuff everything down.
Yeah.
to Get in there. But
Yeah.
they still had to have pretty much all the same stuff.
Same
to get
stuff.
out.
Oh, same. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I can't
That's-
imagine doing it
that's
in
so-
a
yeah.
2-man kayak.
Wow.
That'd be pretty brutal. But,
Yeah.
just I can't sit in a kayak with my feet as high as my butt for
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Circulation
But,
issue.
I know.
These guys they had it dialed. And there's a whole team from Estonia there. There's 2 girls that were quite good in the K2 also that,
Okay.
that won the women's K2 category. And they had like 6 or 8 people on their team there.
Wow.
But
And those guys are all dialed in, right? Like they're like vets
Yeah.
of this race.
yeah, the guys
They're
that
all
beat us were
nuts.
really good. They had won it before and a couple times before, and they were all like a couple of guys were from more like Eastern Canada that were really good marathon canoe paddlers, and then 1 or 2 of the guys were local guys that knew the
Yeah.
river there. But
They've had
they-
their fair share of hallucinating.
they had everything dialed in. Yeah, they were pretty impressive. And
Wow.
I remember looking in their boat and stuff, and I was like, hey, no.
Yeah.
This is my first time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, it was fun.
That's pretty cool.
It was
No, you
super
guys,
fun.
yeah, I remember following that. That was amazing.
So are you eyeballing another race similar to that or something?
Well, so your question was, would I do it again? Yeah,
Right.
I think only if I had a sponsor that was going to
Help fund it.
Yeah, and we actually had, we got some great content and some good video and some good footage. We brought in Chris. We hired Georgia to come up and she had a drone and we had a couple GoPro cameras on the boat. So we have all this content that Chris is going to make a movie about it. Like a
Oh,
small
cool. Like, yeah.
documentary.
Okay.
But he hasn't gotten to it yet. So
Yep.
yeah, we're lacking the funds and the time to get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, there's a giant writer strike going on in Hollywood. I'm sure you can find an editor pretty easy.
yeah, there you go. I'll have to have him fork over the content and we'll get it done. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's hopefully going to get it done for us pretty soon.
Yeah, it's cool.
So you're talking about the build up to it, right? And your friend that had experience doing it and said like, hey, yeah, things are so much easier after.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
So when I got back, the first thing my daughter asked me was like,
Oh, really? Okay, good.
and I looked at her and said, not yet, but I'm sure it will. But no, it's true. It definitely, like every race I've done since then, like Chattajack, which is 31
Yeah.
mile down the river. Like,
Yep.
it really seems short in comparison, like it's like when you can paddle for 3 days straight,
444 miles, Jim.
you pretty much know you can tough out any race.
I was telling Julie about it, and
So-
Julie's like, 444 miles. And I go, yeah, that's like paddling from here to Cedar City, Utah. It's the same distance. Yeah. Think about that. Paddle through Vegas, paddle,
Or let's go up the coast to
Well,
up the coast of
right.
California. That's like paddling from here to north of San
North San
Francisco.
Francisco, yeah, for
that's
sure.
like from
Yep.
from here
But
to
you-
Point Reyes or
Yeah.
something like that.
But you do, the motivating thing is you definitely got Mother Nature on your side. I mean, you're like
You're
when you
running river.
when you like when we stopped to eat, we made it like only one of us at a time would stop, and if you had to put a jacket on or whatever, we
Yeah.
take one at a time, suit up. So with 3 guys paddling, you don't lose much speed.
Right.
You maybe not even half a mile an hour slower.
And you have the
then,
midnight sun.
Yeah, and it's daylight, so the sun just kind of comes up on
Yeah.
your right and kind of circles around behind you because you
trip.
race kind of northwest and kind of swoops around the sky, and then we were paddling at 2 a.m. and could still see. And even at midnight, like we had this beautiful sort of sunset in the sky. It was, we've got video of it and stuff.
Oh,
It's
cool.
pretty cool.
That's cool.
And it was phenomenal. We counted 31 bears, I think I counted. But because the river was so flooded during the race, we didn't see any bears because there was no riverbanks for them to come down
Right.
to. But driving up, we saw them, everywhere.
Yeah.
And,
I think I remember Micah saying it was pretty cold too.
Yeah.
like
At night it was cold.
Yeah,
so you had to dress appropriately, and that was part of the challenge. And then we had lightweight Patagonia rain jackets that fit over our PFDs, so you didn't have to take your PFD on
Right.
or off to put your jacket on.
yeah.
And Micah did a phenomenal job. I mean, like steering would be like mentally to me like the thing that would be the hardest to stay alert. And I was calling the switches the whole way, every 6, 7, 8 strokes or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And but I kept saying, "You want me to steer?" "No, I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I remember talking to him about it. I was like, "Hey, man, I would probably want to sit in your seat too, just because it's stimulating, right? Like
keeps you
for that long, you know, just I would love to be able to steer. You know, it's just
So I was trying to tell jokes and like keep the morale up a little bit and stuff, but eventually you just start to zone out. It's hard to kind of stay
engaged.
Yeah, but it was wild. I mean, it's like one of those things where I'm super glad I did it. But it's funny, my paddling since then, it's like it's been hard to find like my high end speed. I think I'm still kind of recovering.
What?
Still, huh?
Wow.
Yeah. So
interesting. You're still in the big wheel.
Well, I just think that's so much to endure. 40 hours, no sleep.
Shoot.
Yeah, the other guys slept great on the second day or the second stop.
Right.
But I was the only one that I think that didn't sleep real good. But yeah, it was like between the 10, I think we spent 2 to 3 hours at the first stop, so then we had 7 hours at the next stop.
Jeez,
so
crazy. That's wild.
Well,
so I saw this poll online, and it rated you as, and amongst numerous other people, as one of the paddlers of the century from 1900 to 2000.
Nice.
So there's like 20 guys.
JT.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
really?
Yep. And so from somebody that has been doing it for 50 something years, if you were looking at 2000 and going forward, who would you put up there as maybe a future paddler of the century?
Danny Ching.
Yeah.
So Danny was a kayak paddler too.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there was a time when I was the development coach for U.S. Canoe Kayak Team, and I used to. Steve Kelly was running the U.S. Canoe Kayak Team at the time, and he called me up. We had won nationals. The NAC did. And he said, "Jimmy, I want you to do what you're doing at NAC, but like start some satellite clubs." So we went down and started a club in Dana. I mean, you already had Dana Outrigger Canoe Club, but I got some surf skis and some K1s, and we got a place at that youth center down there to keep some boats.
Yeah.
Well, then I did the same thing up at Lanakila. I can't remember if Josh helped me arrange it or not, but we had a trailer, a small trailer, and Sharon Adelsey and I used to load up the boats and then drive them up to Lanakila one day a week. We'd go down to Dana once a week, and we'd try to start little clubs. Well, Danny's brother, Kavika, was one of the little kids that would come down and paddle kayak. So I think Danny was pretty involved with swimming and water polo at the time. So he never was one of the kids I coached, but I remember always seeing Danny around at the regattas from the time he was a little kid, and always being impressed by him. And he was a great kayaker. So Danny's dabbled in a number of other paddling disciplines. I think to be an all-around paddler, like you can't just do it from one discipline. I mean, you can, but I think for me, I started as marathon canoe paddler, then high knee Olympic sprint canoe, and then when I retired from canoeing, a lot of people don't know this, but I raced K1s for a year.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, to try and help balance my body out.
Right.
My goal was to make finals at nationals, which I did. I made the finals in the 200 and K1. And then I started focusing. I never really focused on outrigger. I just kind of always did outriggers like for fun. So like in '89 was my first year race in outrigger canoes. And Imua was quite good then. So Norm Bellingham, who was on our kayak team, talked me into doing outrigger. And I met Dennis, and Dennis put me in the front, and we started paddling, and I got lucky. I mean, we were good. Super Dave was in our crew.
Nice.
But the first, my second race I ever did was, the first race was the Marina. It used to be Marina to Redondo. The women raced from Redondo up to Marina, and then the men got in and paddled back. And we won that race with Derek Harrison steering, and then the next race was rig run, and I remember Dennis, we had a good team. We finished the race, came in, and we just put the boat on the trailer when the second boat came in.
Right.
So we had a good team then.
Yeah.
So I was spoiled like from the first year. We won Catalina that year and everything. But I always did outriggers for fun, like in addition to my sprint canoe. But sprint canoe was kind of my sport, and then outrigger was more my social, fun paddling thing. And to this day, I still do it. I mean, I'm as competitive as anybody now, like when I get in the boat. But I don't think I have ever put the attention and emphasis into it like I did when I was doing sprint canoe full time.
Yeah.
So I think it's the perfect segue
Well, I want to ask a question that where we started with too. So you mentioned that your parents didn't really push you into paddling and that stuff. You take the same approach with your kids?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want them to participate and do their best, and like I learned from coaching kids. I always assumed everybody was as competitive as I was.
Right.
I learned like some kids, they just want to participate, right?
Yeah.
But I think sports, there's so much more to it than it teaches you a lot. Like in volleyball, both my girls are really good in beach volleyball, and that's their sport. And Addie did her first canoe race. She jumped in with Lana Keela last weekend, and she got spoiled too. She jumped in with Ross Flemmer and Richard, and they ended up winning the co-ed short course. And so she's all excited. She said, "Dad, I'll do it again." Yeah, and she had fun. She was, everybody's so nice.
Yeah.
So both my girls are competitive, but like I've never pushed them. Like they're either going to want to do it or they're not. And it's up to them. But all you can do for your kids is create the opportunity. Right? But my wife's really good. She's full time. Like when you're a volleyball mom, or
you're running
coordinating
all over the place,
tournaments and who they're gonna play with and the coaching and all that. So there's quite a bit to it. And so she deals with that pretty much all the time. And I like to show up and watch my kids play, but I'm not going to try and coach them. It's a sport I don't know. I mean, I'm learning. I know a little bit about it, but I'm going to leave the coaching to the guys who are paying to coach the kids.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not going to step in and tell them what they should do or how they should do it. But they're quite good at. Sydney, my older daughter, is going to go to Cal Poly this year. And
cool.
Yeah, and then Addie, my little one, she actually won the nationals, AAU nationals at 14 and under in beach volleyball.
Jeez.
And then she was second last year. That team from Texas beat them in the 16 and under. So, but we're proud of them. They're good.
That's cool.
And Sydney did the Catalina crossing with me last November with the open water team.
On your two-man?
We paddled the two-man from
cool.
From 4th of July Harbor to Huntington Pier. And there was a lot of stand-up paddlers and other paddlers out there, so we just kind of regrouped every hour. So it was a long crossing, but she did great. It was like a 8-hour day. Crossing. So
that's a lot to endure.
Yeah, and she did good. Like I was proud of her. Like she even got stronger towards the end. We started catching little wind swell bumps and stuff, and she was getting the hang of it.
Oh, cool.
So I'm hoping they, at some point will kind of fall in love with paddling too. Yeah. So it's something I can do with them for the next 10 years, because I plan on paddling for another. Till I'm in the grave.
50 years.
Till I'm in the grave, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's inspiring about our training group, Joe, is like the paddling with Willie and Dennis.
Totally.
These guys who are like mid-70s.
Yes. Forever.
They're still hammering. They're still going good.
Yep.
And we're blessed that we have a sport that we can do from the time you're 3.
Yeah.
Till
when you want to stop.
Till you're in the
83.
grave.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, we had Uncle Jimmy here. I don't know, what was that? The first time we tried this.
Yep.
He's 82 and he's still paddling. He's been paddling since he was a little, high school. He's been a long time.
Yeah. Look at Al Ching.
Yeah, Cal Ching. Same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but so you'd ask me like paddlers of the century or whatever, but yeah, Danny's definitely one I'd put in there. But there's, as far as Americans go, Greg Barton.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was probably the most decorated U.S. paddler. He won a bronze in '84, 2 golds in '88, and another bronze in '92. And I was lucky to be on the team when he was on the team, because a lot of the money we got for our whole team was based on the money that was we got for his medals, and Norm Bellingham was his K2 partner. So I didn't realize at the time how lucky we were, when compared to the kids now. So
yeah,
but we got a lot of contenders for paddlers of the century.
Yeah, a lot, definitely a lot. But I agree, Danny's a whole different level, and a lot of disciplines, like you said. He crosses multiple disciplines.
Yeah,
he's a waterman. I mean. It's just and that 40 years old winning the solo, it's like
and I'm paddling with Team Cal now, so I've been I've known Tim Doherty forever. Like
right.
Tim founded Team California, and he's still running it. And getting to know him even more in the last few years of how long he's been. He's the one guy in our crew that's been paddling longer than I have. He's been
really
Wow. Tim started in Hawaii like in the '60s as well.
Yeah.
So and he's got the more I hear his stories, he's been, he's won a lot of races in California with over the years with he used to paddle for Dana and Team Cal and something. But
He runs a good program.
And then Super Dave, he's my partner. Like we've been paddling together since '89. Like we've raced so many races together. And with my 2-man, he's the partner I usually paddle with.
Love that guy.
Yeah.
There's no quit in Dave. He's
sweet
solid
guy, man.
Man, he's mellow too, man.
So mellow.
Yeah.
Always got a smile on his face.
Yeah, we have a good time traveling together and going to the races and stuff.
That's cool.
Relentless though. Oh man, you're like next to him on finishing a 2-minute interval, and you give him any sort of window, man, he takes it.
Take it.
Yeah, he still keeps up with the young guys.
Yeah.
You guys do a lot of traveling for the company too, don't you?
Yeah, a fair bit. I did a couple road trips the last couple of years. Well, the Yukon was my trip last year, but we also did. I drove all the way. Our nationals were in Oklahoma 2 summers ago, and then I went on to Tennessee for the Chattanooga race.
Yep.
From there, and then the Chattajack race. It's called.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
Then I went to Florida, all the way down to Key West, and did a couple of clinics in Florida, and then went up to the Carolina Cup in North Carolina. And then I talked my friend Ian Ross into driving back cross country with me, so we stopped along the way to paddle, and then hit the ADR.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was last year.
Last year was ADR, yeah. Or I met you. It was last year.
Yeah, I think we went out. Yeah, last year, 2 years ago, we stopped on the way back. Last year we drove out. Forward, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, because my boat went on the trailer with a young guy from Arizona.
Yep.
So I met him there with my boat, and then raced, and then brought it back. Yeah.
Pretty wild.
So I like the road trips. Sleep
Yeah.
in the back of my truck, try and save some money, and get a hotel.
Keeps you young,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So Justin and I talk about this, and I'm sure a lot of paddlers or people just talk about it, or ask about it, and I feel like this is a great question for someone like you with all your experience, who's gone to the Olympics, and you have that perspective. You've been there, and you've been paddling canoes all these years. We can't help but to wonder why hasn't the sport of outrigger canoe paddling made it into the Olympics?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. Then it gets the thing that takes to get an Olympic sport in is the number of countries that participate at it is a big one. So outrigger canoeing is, there are quite a few countries that do it, but it's still not where I think enough countries do outrigger canoeing. Where like SUP, for example, for as new as SUP is.
Yeah, a lot of countries.
It's kind of on the precipice, right?
Yeah, it's like popular all through Europe and all over the world.
Yeah.
But the thing that's other limiting for outrigger too is being as far as a team sport, like as far as 6-mans, is like they're trying to, if you're going to add a sport, like you can't add one that's where there's like Dragon Boat would have a hard time because there's 10 to 20 people.
Right.
Yeah.
So many people.
Yeah.
You can only have a handful of crews. But it has to be equal gender opportunity, which outrigger has. Right?
Yeah.
But I think what limits it is maybe the number of countries that participate in outrigger.
I was looking at the registry for Samoa, and they have 21 countries registered, which I think is the biggest.
Yeah, so
far.
In comparison, when I was racing in the Olympics, there was, there'd be maybe 40 countries at the World Championships. Where nowadays they probably get maybe 60 and upward countries. I don't know how many.
Sorry about that.
Probably, I would guess 60 or more countries.
Okay.
That do ICF, International Canoe Federation, sprint canoe.
Right.
And with SUP, the ICF puts on a World Championships as well as the ISA. There's like 2 World Championships right now. And it'd be interesting to look at how many countries participate in those events, but I imagine it's quite a few because it's quite popular in South America too. So a lot of South American countries do
Brazilians
stand-up paddling.
Brazil's an emerging market, man.
Yeah.
I keep saying it. You look at what they're doing with all kinds of other sports, man. They're just picking up all over the place.
Yeah.
But pretty crazy.
But, so I guess that's what, the IVF, right? Was it Uncle Bud Hole, right? He's on that board, right? Or I think he's one of the original people that started it. And wasn't the IVF kind of the stepping stone, to perpetuate the sport and perhaps, get it to the Olympics? I don't know if that was the mission statement, but
yeah, it may have been.
But
honestly, I haven't been too involved with the politics of outrigger canoe over the years. I show up and race, but I've been too involved behind the scenes.
But
don't.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah,
don't do it.
But I call it paddle ticks.
Yeah,
paddle ticks. Yeah.
With stand-up paddleboarding, I got into it a little bit. I realized that I
That's a whole nother bag of beans.
Yeah, right.
I've got other areas I can invest my time.
Yeah.
Not that it needs people like me to kind of give it some direction, but at the same time, like, you know, I got 2 young kids and a business,
Yeah,
and it's
no.
like you can only put so much time.
Totally.
Yeah.
But as a canoe paddler, you know, politics aside, just from like, you know, you touched on it earlier about like, you know, yeah, you did your sprinting and your, you know, your training, and then canoe paddling was kind of this social, you know, fun lifestyle, you know, activity.
Uh-huh.
Can you see it being in the Olympics? Like as far as like just as a sport?
Yeah, for sure.
You could see it?
Yeah, and maybe even it's hard to say, you know, in what discipline. I mean, it could be V1s or OC1s even, because
Yeah.
we're talking about individuals,
Right.
singles.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, you know, I look at some of the sports that are in the Olympics and I'm like scratching my head.
Yeah.
But you know, at the end of the day, it's a business, right? So
Totally.
the Olympic Committee has to welcome the sports that are, you know, diverse.
Yeah.
A lot of countries participate, equal gender, everything, and then you know, at the end of the day, it's got to have some marketing appeal, like to have, you know,
Yeah.
people interested in watching it. And that's the sad thing. Like the Olympics nowadays isn't quite thought of it as it was when I was
Yeah.
a kid. I don't think
Revered, yeah.
And it's not that it's any different or any worse. It's just there's so many more things, you know, like
Right.
so many more sports. But you know, school sports now is, you know, like year after year. Like the sport my kids do, beach volleyball, is a relatively new sport. Collegiate. If you look at the sports that the U.S. is good at, most of them are all collegiate sports.
Yeah.
You know, like
swimming.
So canoeing's not collegiate,
Right,
Or
right.
rowing is, right?
Right.
Yes.
That's right.
So like
Yeah.
NAC has a great program here for, you know, rowing, particularly like for women to get into a Division I school with a rowing school.
Okay.
I mean, California water polo, beach volleyball, like those are really popular sports in Southern California, and they're good opportunities for kids to get into good schools. But canoeing doesn't have that. You know, I did it truly just because I love canoe paddling. You know,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Justin and I were talking about, was I talking? I think I was talking about you about like how, you know, it was so different. You know, it's so different now than what it was 10, 15 years ago, where, you know, there was a lot more younger people that paddled, right? Like 6-man canoes, right? Junior programs were a lot bigger. And
we're a lot bigger. You said
were a lot
Were.
bigger. Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I'd like to see the
feel like-
data on that.
I feel like there was just a lot more younger people, you know, like, so I'm 35 years old now, right? I remember moving to California when I was 18, 19, and most of the paddlers that I knew were all my age now. They're all like mid 30s, early 30s. And that made up the entire, like most of the paddling population from what I can remember, you know, 15 years ago. And now, you know, those 35-year-olds are all in their 50s, right? Most of them are in their 50s and they're still doing it.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of 30-something-year-olds
Yeah.
or 20-something-year-olds.
Yeah, so you have a lot of 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds,
Yeah.
and even 60-year-olds, and
Yeah.
And what it is, it's you know, the clubs that do have good junior programs, the kids paddle, but then once they go off to college or when they got to make a living,
Yep.
Yeah, it drops off for a
and
while.
Yep.
it drops off. So we don't have a lot of kids in that 20 to early 30 demographic.
Yeah.
It's later 30s when they come back, and it's people who did other sports or maybe carried on their collegiate interests sport, and as they get older, they're trying to find a new activity, something that they can do that's enjoyable and it's social.
Yeah.
So it's either pickleball or outrigger canoeing, right?
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but
Pickleball.
so pickleball is the other one that's just massive
So
right now.
big.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, man.
And anybody can play pickleball.
Right. Right.
So with paddling, yeah, I noticed that too. A couple of guys on Team Cal and I were talking about how it's a lot of guys. I mean, the senior masters division is
Huge.
competitive.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the masters
Yeah.
division is competitive. But
Yep.
yeah, I remember when I was younger, like in my 20s, in '89, I would have been 24. Let's see, I was born in '65. Yeah, so you know, I started paddling outrigger canoes in my 20s. And yeah, I remember going to the races, and there was always like, you know, some people in their 20s and
Yeah.
20s and 30s was
Yeah.
a big age, I guess.
Yeah.
Check out all the chicks, right? You're like, hey, how's it? Oh, see the honey girls at Marina Del Rey, bro. Like,
Yeah. So my wife and I met in Catalina at Luau
See,
Larry's.
there it is.
After
There you
the
go.
Yeah, she paddled
Yep.
from Marina Del Rey. She was
Yep.
living in Hawaii, had just moved back. Yeah.
I just picked that up from the
Yeah.
Wild Buffalo, that wiki whack right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Lizzie was with another friend of mine from Hawaii, Malia Kamasugi, and we were at Luau Larry's, and I'm like, who's that? And then
See?
she didn't eat all her fries. Like, are you gonna eat those? And she-
Nice.
So then I like
It's a
ate her
segue.
fries.
Thank you so much. Yep.
That's how it started
Done deal.
So
Love it first sight.
we were talking about the Banfields. So when I would hang out with Josh or Justin, right? We'd go out and after like races, and Justin's line was when a girl would walk by, he'd stop. So we'd be like, "Hey, you okay?" just a random girl. You okay? You okay? Kinda,
Until someone bit one of the girls.
Yeah.
Through, oh,
Like,
why? Why? You
why would it
asking?
not be okay?
Yeah.
And that was his line.
Conversation.
Hey, you okay?
Sometimes simple works.
Yeah, no, yeah. But yeah, I mean, but it felt like a more simple time, you know. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to, talk about the past or. I mean, talk about the past is fun. That's why we're doing what we're doing right now. But it's just not.
Well, my daughter had a great time, and Lana Keel's got a great kids program.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dana, I mean, I know
Dana
her-
too.
Who has the biggest kids programs now? I would probably say
Right.
Lana Keel and Dana.
Lana
Right,
Keel and
yeah.
Dana, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the Scora statistics and demographics, they're the two clubs that have maintained a pretty large keiki program.
How about Marina? Because Marina's getting
Marina
to be a
might-
pretty
yeah.
big club too.
Yep. I think Ka'akai had it for a long time too.
Yeah.
A lot of the Amua guys took their kids up there when they, when Mua had a mass exodus and they all went up there. They did, all the kids were paddling there too, and I think it just ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But
'Cause
like your point
Yeah.
is, people start paddling. They go to school, they get a job,
Yeah.
and then they come back to paddling at 30, 35, 40 when they're, making some money and they have time to,
Yeah.
go paddle.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting? I think there'd be a lot of sports that are kind of in the same boat. I think it's our era, like cycling.
Sure.
There's a lot of. I started doing some fun mountain bike races, like they call it Over the Hump. It's like a Tuesday night race
Yep.
out in Irvine. And I couldn't believe, like, I was racing in the 40s, and like I think I'm a decent mountain biker, but I was like mid pack at best,
Yeah.
There's a lot of so I remember one time going, oh, well, I'm almost 50. Like, how would I have done in the 50s? And I would have finished even worse in the 50s. And one of the guys was explaining to me that's about the time a lot of guys start to retire. Or they're,
Yeah, they're at a point where
they're self-employed or whatever.
or
where
they're
they
managing their
have the
jobs.
time.
Like, you guys work and I'm going to race.
Or they raise kids. The kids are old enough now and kind of on their own.
Now they can
College.
do, yeah.
Now they're out just training
Yeah,
full
yeah,
time.
yeah.
And if I wasn't so busy at work, I'd probably be. I'm actually getting on the bike and riding still a little bit
Yeah.
sometimes and paddling and trying to do it all.
Yeah. I tried my hand at cycling, and I did it for a little bit because my sister talked me into riding, or she wanted to ride up going to the Sun Road up to Logan
Okay.
Pass, and then ride back down. Right,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I trained, got a bike, rode it a bunch, did a bunch of miles, and rode with a cycling club for a little bit. The bunch of guys that paddle with us. Anyways, we do the ride. And it took us an hour and 30 minutes to climb from Avalanche all the way up to Logan. Took us 12 minutes to come back down.
Oh wow.
And after that,
Jeez.
I just sold the bike. That was it.
Yeah.
Just told my sister,
I'm actually
that's
gonna.
it.
Yeah, I'm gonna ride tomorrow morning with Willie Reichenstein.
All right, yeah.
There you go.
I've been riding with him for off and on for 30 years since I've been here. Actually,
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's I found a whole group of guys came to paddle at Newport Outrigger, and I was running Newport Outrigger. These guys showed up, and they're all cyclists, and they had lungs, so they could go on the boat for a long time. It's just a matter of getting them accustomed to using other muscles,
Shoulders in the
yeah,
back,
yeah. But they all turned out to be good paddlers, so worked out.
That's cool.
Yeah, they're fun guys too.
Yeah.
So, but all the guys hung out too. They all ended up coming to Castaways, and now we're just doing our thing over there, barbecuing and drinking too much.
I think it's good if all the clubs can dedicate some time to trying to get the kids on the water, because that's kind of the future of the sport. It only takes even if you keep 10% of them or 20% of them,
Yep.
those are the ones that are going to be your Dannys and your Judsons and
Yeah.
the kids that are still in their 20s now that are kicking butt now. That
Yeah,
Miles,
yeah,
Miles Orr and some guys. So
yeah. Will's got a couple good kids, like Justice and Judson.
Yeah.
Those kids are going to be good if they stay with it.
Yeah,
And I can call them kids because they're half my age. So
Yeah, we got to keep it fun, keep it exciting, and everyone's going to want to continue to do it
for sure.
Yeah.
Right on.
What's cool is you can paddle year round now in California because we go from, all winter long. You got your one-man season races every other weekend, and then they added the V1 races that they
Yep.
in between.
Fill all the open weekends.
If you add up, I bet there's 30 races a year in Southern California,
Yeah.
If not more, between all the OC1 races
Yeah.
and V1
Yep.
races.
Yeah,
season.
the only gap is after Catalina till we get to January, right?
Well,
Or whatever.
And that brings a good point, right? You look at the Kaivi Solo this past, couple weeks ago, four California kids in the top 10,
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty wild. Yeah.
I mean, a couple of them beat some Tahitians. That's
So Miles, Will,
Rylan and Danny.
Rylan. That's right, Rylan.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Danny.
And Danny,
Danny,
yeah.
Rylan, Miles, and
Yep.
Will.
Yep. And then
Yeah,
the
that's
other
a statement, man.
Right.
Yeah.
the other guys were to the top Tahitian guys
Yeah.
for the most part. At least 5 of them were.
Yeah.
Right. Wild.
Yeah, it's definitely good paddling here. I'm sure you had a lot to do with it, Jim.
I don't know about that, but maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
I think so, man.
Got to
I
give
think-
credit where credit's due,
Yeah,
right?
man.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But,
Well, guys, it's been an hour and 25 minutes.
is that the record?
No,
Yes.
we could. You know what?
Oh,
Honestly,
man.
Jim, we could keep going. I could easily
Yeah.
go for another hour and a half.
Everybody's asleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know,
like,
exactly.
yeah.
But no, we'll edit this up and put it. An hour and 25 is a good amount. But I think we have Jim back again in a half a year. Talk about more stuff.
His next wood strip
Yeah, because
vessel.
I feel like we glanced over some of the stuff that I wanted to really dig into, like
Yeah, me
the
too.
early years
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that, which I'm sure we could talk about for hours. But that's
Yeah.
a lot more content we can bring up with Jim, huh?
Absolutely.
I got some stories.
I like
Yeah.
it. Well, thank you so much. And I was thanking Saul the other day. I'm like, thanks for bringing Jim to the house at the river, because man, it's such a happenstance type of thing, and hanging out with you, it was awesome, and and then
That was a blast.
doing the research on all this stuff, I'm like, holy shit, this guy's the shit.
Yeah.
better sharpen up my game here a little bit,
I was gonna
But
say, where'd you get that resume? That's pretty good.
yeah, I dug it up online. It's all over.
A couple things I had forgotten about.
So real quick, Jim's he's a big Bengals fan.
Yeah,
And
well,
we're
Cincinnati
49er
fans.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? It's gonna happen. I'm calling it. Next year's Super Bowl.
Bengals,
49ers,
Niners.
Yep.
Bengals. Ooh.
Cincinnati, San Francisco.
If that happens, we have to get together and watch the game.
Oh, that would be amazing.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
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 I like Cincinnati. I don't hate Cincinnati at all.
Yeah, I love the way they built that team.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And I think Joe Burrow's got so much. I like the swagger. I like the whole thing about him.
Yep.
He's a character, and I don't know. He's living up to his legendary status, I think.
He gets the job done.
He's just, and he just,
Cincinnati loves him.
yeah, which
Yeah.
is all that matters.
Yeah.
That's a hard town to please.
Yeah, it can
Cleveland, Cincinnati,
Yeah.
Baltimore, all those
Pittsburgh.
guys up there in that area are
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah.
Tough fans. Tough fans. Well,
be. So yeah,
Well,
was
thank
at
you
that
so
Freezer
much.
Bowl game.
Right?
Well, the Bengals beat the Chargers to get in to play the Niners.
Yeah.
That was when I was in high school. Actually.
yep. Chris Collinsworth always talks about that game.
Oh man,
And
that
he
guy's
hates
a
it.
Niner hater, bruh.
hates
Is that
it.
the John Candy game?
So I got to
Is that
tell you
the-
this Chris Collinsworth story real quick. So The
Okay.
very first time I ever had these on and sat across was with Chris Collinsworth.
Really?
He had a sports radio show in Cincinnati after he was with the Bengals.
Yeah.
And my sister phoned him up, I think after my second or third Olympics.
Yeah.
I said, hey, my brother's in town if you want. He goes, yeah, bring him. Yeah, have him come down to the studio. So, and he was so personable and so funny.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
first thing he asked me was, okay, so Jim, he goes like, what's it like being in Olympics with canoeing? So you got the canoe with the cooler of beer and you're paddling down. And it just like, and I totally played into it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
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 But he was great. He was pretty funny.
He seems like a really cool dude. Like,
Yeah.
it took a little while for me to get used to him calling with Al Michaels,
Yeah, he's kind of sarcastic.
Well, Al Michaels is my favorite, anyways. Doesn't
Me too.
matter.
I love Al
Anybody,
Michaels,
like
yeah.
Madden was
God.
great with Al Michaels,
Yes.
but it's hard for me to
That
transition into
Yeah,
that.
I
But
agree.
he does a good job. He's not, I think he's one of the better of the sports announcers that we have for football, because some of the guys now are just a joke.
Al Michaels has been around forever.
Al Michaels the best.
I had dinner with Al Michaels once.
No,
So
Jim, don't tell me these.
I know.
And,
We're gonna start another.
Oh my
it's
God.
another podcast.
yeah, totally.
He
So
was-
okay. So you have dinner with Al Michaels, And
Well, it wasn't just me and Al Michaels.
Right.
He was a keynote speaker for a fundraiser for the Olympics. And
did you get to talk to him?
Yeah, I was at the table with him and a handful
Johnny
of guys.
Hopkins.
So there was a rower from Cincinnati that made the Olympic team, myself, and then we were the 2 Olympians that they were honoring to try and raise money for.
Okay.
It was a fundraiser.
Yeah.
But they brought in Al Michaels as the keynote speaker.
Right.
He was great.
Yeah.
But I remember he was real personable too. Like we just sat down at a
that
table
makes
with about 6 of us there, and
Makes me like him even
And
more.
I was young, I was like
Yeah.
in my 20s. I was really nervous, because I saw him on TV,
Yeah. There's like, I would say that I don't get starstruck at all very often. I have a cousin that played for the 49ers and won Super Bowls with them. And I met all the big athletes.
Beat the Bengals too.
Yeah, I met all the big 49ers and never ever really felt, like, oh my God, look, so-and-so, whatever.
Yeah.
But Al Michaels is one for sure. Like hearing his voice and listening to him call a game, like if I ever met him, I would just be like, I wouldn't know what to do.
Do you remember Napoleon McCallum played for the Raiders?
Yeah.
So we played Pee Wee football together.
You did, really?
Yeah, I played, and I was his sparring partner in wrestling.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I'm telling you, the Midwest breeds the best athletes. Well, maybe Samoa does now too, but
Yeah. well, Samoa,
a lot to be had
Samoa breeds the best football players for the first 2 or 3 quarters.
right.
And then after that, it's like,
Hey, take it easy, Joe. Take it easy. Yeah. No, how cool. Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Yeah,
it's
thanks
been
for
a
having
pleasure, man. Oh, so great,
Yeah, Jim.
And I can't wait to do episode number 2 because I already know what's going to happen.
It's gonna be football season.
Well, a whole bunch of people I know are going to ask me like, "Why didn't you ask Jim this? How come you didn't do this? How come we're going to have a whole list of things to cover next time we talk."
Let's do it. I'm 10 minutes away.
Awesome. I like that.
I'd be happy to.
So cool, man. So stoked to have you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And shoot, anything else?
No, we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Awesome.
great, man. Great.
Perfect.
Cool.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Let's cut it. We're done. Have a good night.